Dr. Wei Zhang had never really grown accustomed to having an audience while he worked. In the early years of his career, there'd been the occasional handful of students from Beijing Technical University's Faculty of Biomedical Engineering, and, as his reputation grew, students had come from further afield, from Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, and Hong Kong. Zhang didn't mind students so much. They were young and ignorant, but they were also idealistic, humble, and hard-working. They knew their place, and would lower their heads in respect as he walked by. Glancing their way, he even caught the occasional glimpse of himself as a young man, fresh off the train from Yunnan province, with a head full of ideas and a fierce determination to learn the inner workings of the universe. Then came the pharmaceutical companies, with their endless questions about efficiencies of scale, or the way that a particular project might one day yield a cure for this condition or that disease. Zhang smiled and patiently answered their questions, knowing that their funding was vital to his work, but inwardly he cursed their greed. All they could see was the market. All they cared about was beating the competition, and as a result, they fell over themselves to throw funding his way. They had no eye for the beauty of science, for the way that a simple chemical equation might unlock endless, untapped potential. He barely had time to remove his positive pressure suit and peel the layers of gloves from his hands before they crowded round, waiting to hear news of his latest discovery. At least these latest observers weren't like that. He glanced over his shoulder and saw them sitting in a row on the other side of the glass. 3 men, all aged somewhere in their late 20s. All strong-looking, all sharp-eyed, all unsmiling, all largely silent. None of them pretended for one single second that they were interested in science. They would be there when he emerged from the containment laboratory, but they would also be there when he took the lift down to the garage. Word had come down through the laboratory director that Zhang was no longer permitted to drive himself to and from work each day. So the 3 men would be waiting outside his front door each morning, handguns obvious in the holsters strapped across their chests. He didn't know where they went at night, but more than once he'd gone outside onto his terrace to smoke a cigarette and spotted one of them lurking in the shadows at the bottom of his narrow garden. He knew the reason for their constant presence. The laboratory director who told him about the new security arrangements was too nervous to go into any detail, but the moment Zhang had first notified his peers of his breakthrough, he knew that everything would change. Even those wide-eyed and naive students from Beijing Technical University would have been able to spot the significance of something so awe-inspiring and terrifying in its potential.